keep getting these questions in my lives, so I wanted to cover this because I don't often have time to get into it too much. So the question I get more than any other is, why does the US and other leaders support Israel? Like, what's up with that? We see what they're doing. It's pretty awful. So here's the simplest explanation. If you are someone who got arrested, God forbid, and they put handcuffs on you, and you're sitting in the back of the squad car, and you're stuck back there, and the cops are outside doing whatever the hell they're doing, just waiting, which unfortunately I can relate to because that's happened to me. That's a whole nother video. So you're back there, and somebody says to you, why don't you just get out of the handcuffs and leave the car? And you're like, well, dude, first of all, the handcuffs are on tight, and they're metal, and I can't get out of them. And B, I'm locked in this damn patrol car. What the hell do you expect me to do? Well, that's exactly the situation that these politicians are in. They are locked into a bad system where a lobbying group called AIPAC and other groups that operate in some of these Western so-called democracies, they lobby politicians. They give them a lot of money for their campaigns, so-called donations. Other people call them a different name, as do I. And they're stuck. And if they push against these folks or don't take their money, they're considered an enemy. And then, of course, they will try to run someone else to take their place. And the way you know this is if you look at what politicians were saying, especially in the United States, but also in Britain and other places. There was a knee-jerk reaction that kind of goes like this. You heard it all over the news. I stand with Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself. Yep, I'm sure you heard that more than once or twice or even more than 30,000 times. And that's why they're stuck. There's nothing they can do. They're jammed up. Even if they personally feel differently, which I'm sure many of them do, they're probably watching in horror at what's happening right now in Gaza. But they know they can't do a damn thing about it because it's political suicide, especially in the United States, to push against the Israel lobby. So that's why. Now there's some other reasons that relate to military and geopolitics and energy and money, and those all come together too. But they're all kind of put together. And it's really sad, but that's the problem with Western democracies writ large. Every issue in most of the Western democracies are compromised, and the only folks that benefit from the political process are the donor class, the corporate and the national security state, and those that don't change from administration to administration. If you notice something in the US, it doesn't matter who you vote for anymore. I call it heads they win, tails we lose. And that's because both parties are compromised. And that the candidates are not elected. When two candidates come up for either president or for a representative race, House of Representatives, or even Senate, especially Senate, they've been already pre-selected. Somebody has vetted them. Somebody has made sure they're going to quote unquote play ball. And they go into a terrible viper pit that once they get into Congress, they're pressured by the party leadership to behave a certain way. And again, just like with AIPAC, if they don't behave a certain way, they get punished, meaning that they're not going to give them money to get reelected. The first job of a politician is to stay in power, not to serve the constituents. So I don't think the political system has served the constituents in the United States, probably in its history at all. Maybe a little bit in the 1930s after the Great Depression. But even then, it's oriented towards big business and powerful special interests. In this case, the Israel lobby and all the other industry groups, pharmaceutical groups, weapons manufacturers, energy companies. You get the whole point. That's why. So it's been completely co-opted, bought off, and unfortunately, there's not much that can be done. People say, well, if voting's not going to make a difference, what can we do? Well, Americans have this fantasy that somebody's going to be their savior, that if they could just elect the right president or just get the right person in office or enough of them, it's not going to happen. It's the money in politics that has to change. It's the long-standing national security state that's in place that has to change. It's the wealthy interests that have control of all this that's going to have to change. And I got news for you. They're not going to do it willingly. So it's going to have to be something a little more stringent than voting or protesting, as we're seeing right now. It just doesn't change things. Sorry, that's the reality. I wish I could say something different to you. If somebody has news that I'm not picking up on, let me know.